Hi, everybody. Welcome to Outer Sounds, episode number 2. I'm here with Jefre Cantu-Ledesma, and we have selected his new reissue of Love is a Stream. Yeah, there it is, for the December Outer Sounds subscription. And yeah, we're here to talk about the record and music and whatever else. So, hey, Jeffrey.
Hi, Greg. Nice
How
to
you
see you.
doing? Good to see you too. So I told you the other day that I was like listening, to like your your earlier music and kind of revisiting.
Why are you doing that?
Yeah, why are you doing that, man? Just kind of revisiting some of your earlier records, and
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to just talk a little bit at first about like some of the albums you were making, like leading up to Love is a Stream.
Right.
The two things that I sort of like noticed were, well, first we have to say that Love is a Stream originally was released in 2010 on Type Records.
Yeah.
On LP and CD. I actually have the
OG.
Yeah, of the original
with Matt Connor's art.
Yeah, the original LP here.
Sorry,
yeah. So that's what the original looks like.
Yeah.
And so that came out in 2010. It seemed like your solo releases kind of started in like a few years before that, 2006, 2007.
Yeah.
And most of those were like either CDRs or small tape releases, things like that. Did the release on Type feel like your first like big solo release, or just kind of a natural progression into that?
It's hard to remember now.
Yeah, I know, 10 years ago.
Yeah. I remember feeling at the time, particularly then, Type was like it was happening,
Yeah, totally.
A lot of good stuff coming out, and people were really paying attention to the label. So I remember when John asked me, feeling that it was like I had to kind of take it seriously, and I wanted to like really push myself to try something new. So up until then, it's not that I didn't take the previous tapes or anything seriously, but it's like each one was just sort of maybe like an experiment, or, oh, let me try this. Oh, that sounds cool. And that'll be good for a tape, and this like, perhaps because of the exposure or something, that felt like, okay, well, what I wanted, like, and also at that time, as lots of people were making just like ambient drone music.
Right.
I was like, yeah, I can't do that. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit, and started falling back into the guitar and like, feeling like, okay, let me make a record with like songs, and it's like feels a bit more substantial than just like, I think most of those tapes and stuff, it's like one track per side, or it all sort of feels of like one piece.
Yeah, for sure. Like I always felt that too, that CDRs and tapes felt a little more casual but more direct, in that they were like, I'm gonna experiment with some things, and you can release them right away because it's a CDR or a tape, and there's not like a production time, and there's just not, you can get them out into the world. And the one thing that I listened to, though, that I thought it felt like a clear like precursor to Love is a Stream was the Shining Skull Breath album, which was released on CDR in 2007, and then reissued on LP in 2011. Prior to that, it seemed like there were some experiments that you were making, but it seemed like that particular like thing was very like a clear like idea of like where maybe you were gonna go with the record.
Yeah, definitely. I think I mean, a number of the releases had guitar on them before, but then that one, I think I was like really inspired by seeing Yellow Swans play, and
Right.
like
I was
it
gonna
was
ask about
just
that.
like this intense wall of noise, but Gabe was just like playing guitar and shredding and just going crazy, and I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, why don't I just play guitar more? Like that's my main instrument. That's what I have played in most of the music I've made. Um, so yeah, I was focusing on guitar and like seeing how far I could do it on my own, because most of my musical experience up to that point was in playing in bands, really.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Something about just like layering distorted guitar felt like full to me, and like
Like a
um,
band sound or something.
yeah, exactly. And I like, I'm not like, I can't really play guitar. Like I'm not like a virtuoso. I never learned how to play scales or,
Yeah.
any of the things that, I mean, I appreciate that. I love that kind of musicianship, but that's just not the kind of musician I am. So I think that record and also Love as a Streamer were like these attempts of like having, like playing to my strengths, which at that time I was kind of discovering as like my ability to sort of layer and like create density that also
Yeah.
had some cohesion and maybe beauty, or
Right.
uh, that I could build up things in an interesting way without needing to shred or learn, play a
Yeah.
lot,
Totally.
and that's been a through line through a lot of my work, I think, too. So
Yeah, I can hear that for sure. So how did you make this record? You said there's a lot of guitar, but I'm assuming there's like a lot of pedals, distortion,
yeah,
tape saturation stuff, or
I
there's
remember.
computer based stuff.
Yeah, I remember like Shining Skull Breath. I made in MSP. I like made a little mixer,
Oh
and I
yeah,
just
yeah.
had like files, and I would just like press play on all the files and like doing mixing. And I was like, yeah, this is not sustainable. Like I'm doing mixing in MSP, like with the
Oh,
mouse.
so bad. Yeah,
Bring that up, not automating it or anything, and like
yeah,
doing
yeah,
like 4 tracks and being like, okay, that was kind of good. Let me do that again. I was like, okay, this is not sustainable. Like, and I didn't want to go back to 4 track or anything like that. So I remember buying Ableton because I was like, okay, I need to be able to multi-track and like
yeah.
spend a little bit of time just trying to figure it out. And I just like at that point, I was just using it as a multi-track
Right,
um,
right.
system. So there's a lot of like non-looped guitar playing on that record, where
Hmm.
I'm just playing 2 chords and then switching it up,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of, yeah, there I was still playing through pedals. I wasn't using an amp. I was going direct into the computer, but I was like using pedals, and then I think I had like one of those pod, like, those
oh yeah. Everyone
amp
had one.
modeling things. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I was using that, and then Ableton offered like, compression and like distortion, and I was like trying
right.
to find ways to do those two together. Like when I listen to it now, it sounds so in the box to me in a way that like I would find annoying now, I think.
I mean, when I listen to it now, I definitely hear like I'm hearing like pedals, but
Yeah,
I feel like I'm hearing both layers. I'm hearing like
right.
digital processing and
Yeah,
analog pedals and guitars and stuff, and so I think it
yeah,
makes a nice mix because the digital processing stuff is usually like a little more like hi-fi sounding,
right, right.
but then mixed with like a grittier lower fi kind of sound too.
Yeah, yeah. And most of it is guitar pedals that are like guitar being played through pedals into the machine and then looped, and maybe the effects are really simple, like compression, delay, reverb, like that,
Yeah, totally.
nothing crazy. Any of the other guitar effects were coming from pedals like distortion,
Right.
um, and then I made the record, and then I had a buddy of mine put it on to 2-inch tape.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And he just took the files and dumped it onto tape, and I just told him to push it, and just get enough, push it enough to get tape compression, not
Yeah.
so much that it's causing distortion, but just enough to give it a little bit of hairiness. And then that ended up becoming the record. So I think that helped, that because I was hearing the computerness of it, you know, in a way that I didn't want at the time.
Yeah, I've done that with well, a couple of my records. I've done the same thing where I ran it out to tape and then brought it back.
Did you do that with Mutually Arising? Is that
yeah, I did. That was the main one that I did that with.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful
the same thing. It felt too clear or digital or something, and I wanted to just get that kind of tape saturation sound to it. So
did that record ever come out on vinyl?
No, CD only.
CD only.
Totally bombed.
God, it's so good though.
Yeah, that was like my drone statement, you know.
Yeah, but it's great. It's really good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty proud of that one. But
that one holds up. That one holds up.
No one bought it. After I made that record, Cranky was kind of like, okay, yeah.
Thanks, Greg.
Nice knowing you, man. Like, okay, well, you know.
Well, that's cool. The kids that are coming up now, when they like in 10 years, when they get into like early aughts drone music, it'll be on that list, you know. The what somebody will do, you know, it'll be like the Alan Licht version, but it'll be like the millennials will be doing that, you know.
Drones, yeah. 2000s. Yeah.
And they'll be calling us up and being like, man, how'd you make that record?
That's what I'm doing right here, man. So the other thing about this record too is like it's clearly like shorter tracks, almost like you said, you consider them songs almost, vignettes, instead of making one longer kind of like drone piece. It has these like kind of distinct pieces, but they're all like, they all feel like they go together, you know. I thought that's like an interesting change too from your other work. The other thing that is big on this record is the vocals, you know. And you want to talk about how you added all that. There's like very distant kind of like wordless vocals, you know, in a lot of the tracks.
Yeah, I think both of those aspects are a piece of like trying to get closer to like being a band, you know, like making it like that I'm a band. And with the vocals in particular, you know, one thing that I've become conscious of within my own process and like my own creative process is that I much prefer like collaboration. And even like, so for instance, my last solo record has like 15 people playing on it. Like I just find it much more interesting, you know? So I think that was an early attempt on Love Is a Stream for me of like engaging with others in a way that felt like, you know, it wasn't just me alone.
Right.
It just feels much more interesting to me. So, and also the vocals just added like, I wanted to go for something that really felt like you were listening to like a band playing, you know?
Yeah.
And try to get as close to that rather than just like one dude like droning on the guitar or whatever. So I think that's also why the songs are like shorter and they almost feel like, you know, each one's like its own little composition.
What is it about collaboration that feels good? I feel the same way too. It's like, I think it's like at least in my experience, like when you collaborate with people, a couple things happen. Like the pressure is off in a way. And also like you might try and do things that you wouldn't normally do just by yourself, you know. It seems like, you know, collaboration has that effect where it can kind of like, you know, open your music up to some other possibilities. Yeah,
it's true. And I think there's like a level of if you're working with someone that you really trust, then there's a level of like what you said, the pressure's off, where they're like, no, this is good. And you're like, okay, cool. like if you're into it, I'm good, you know,
Yeah,
like,
let's go with that.
yeah, I certainly experienced that like with my collaborations with Felicia, because like,
Mm-hmm.
at least on paper, our worlds are kind of like, I mean, there's
Right.
obviously there's overlap, but like we're kind of in different, we occupy sort of different zones, but like when I work with her and we just finished this third record, which I was telling you about, like, I think if you listen to my discography, you might be hard pressed to imagine that I'm actually on that record, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
But all the things that I'm doing on there, I really love, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
they're a lot of fun and it's really interesting to me. But yeah, I don't think I would really, when I'm working on my own, I wouldn't explore those areas as
Right.
much. Something about the meeting, the sort of opening up to like the possibility of like, what could this be like, you know?
Yeah, totally, and it totally works too. I love that those records you guys have made.
Yeah, they're great. And that first one took, it literally took years, because like it took us like months and months to get to that point where we're like, oh, this is what we're supposed to be
Yeah,
doing.
this is our music.
Yeah, yeah. And that process, I just love. I just love that process
Yeah,
so much. You know, I really, that for me is like the interesting part of music making, is like just sort of toiling away to where you're
yeah,
like, what is this supposed to sound like? Like where, oh, this might be, oh no, that's definitely not it. No, no, okay, let's back up a little bit. Like, oh shit, like you open a door and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, this is it.
yeah, yeah.
You know, and then you just like go crazy, you know.
Right. Yeah, there's like a discovery process, and then at some point, it like everything kind of gels, and you're like,
Right.
all right, this is really happening now, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
like what we're gonna go with. But
And
um,
that's really rich in collaborations, right?
yeah,
And
that's
also my musicianship, like the way that I learned to be a musician came through collaborating, like
playing
in
in
band.
bands and stuff.
Like I wasn't the kid that was like on the couch like learning Metallica songs. That was
Right.
never me, you know. So
Yeah. So I went and read some like reviews of Love Is a Stream from like 2010,
oh god.
just for fun.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, just like weird old like Coke machine glow and like weird like music blogs, and stuff like that.
They're just
Um,
gone now.
but I'm sure you remember this at the time, but it seemed like everyone was like uh calling your album like shoegaze or new gaze or something like that. And like what's your take on that? I mean, I hear, obviously you hear like the influence of like My Bloody Valentine or something, but I
Yeah.
personally, I'm hearing more of like you said before, Yellow Swans or
Mhm.
Finesse or
Yeah.
Oval or Tim Hecker, like those kind of zones that, those were people who were like pushing like drone and ambient and electronic music like a little harder and making it
Yeah.
grittier and more texture
Yeah.
and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I don't reject the the label of like shoegaze, because I think it
Yeah,
certainly has its place within my influences, you know. But yeah, I was probably listening to a lot more of the stuff that you just named than I was
right.
like My Bloody Valentine. And I came to shoegaze music really late too. Like even in Tarantel and all the early stuff, I really wasn't like super deep into like second tier shoegaze stuff that I found out
Yeah.
later. Like that record, I was really into Love's Life's Crushing when I was making Love Is
Okay.
a String. Like they were
Yeah, that makes sense.
that stuff. There was some reissues that had come out right around that time, and I was like, wow, this is like really interesting. And I think that had a cast a pretty long shadow over my my process. I liked that it was just guitar and vocals. You know, it was just
Right.
a guy playing guitar and a woman singing. But other than that, like, you know, I was fine. Like I'm always fine with whatever people hear in the music. You know, it's like it's at that point, and you probably have this experience, like you feel so separate from it in a way. You know,
Yeah.
it's like it's out in the world, and it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, if you want to call it, you know, shoegaze stuff or whatever, or if you hear, you know, something in it that I didn't necessarily put there or wasn't my intention, that's fine too. You know, it has a life of its own, and I don't need to defend it once it's like out in the world, you know.
Yeah,
But
that's how I feel too. It's like, you know, music writers always want to find an easy like label or something to put
right.
on music anyway. So, and that's usually
Yeah,
what happens.
that's true. And I felt that definitely happened once. Like someone named it shoegaze. That was it. It was kind of like,
Yeah,
oh.
everyone wanted to call it that.
But you know what I'm realizing? I'm curious what you think about this. Like, I feel like shoegaze is like it's become like a perennial musical form now. Like every few years,
I
like
think so. Yeah.
there's like a couple bands or like even people who have made music a long time, all of a sudden they make, um, you know, a record that sounds like it's got a heavy shoegaze influence, or things will just pop up all of a sudden. And then it'll go away. And a few years later,
Yeah.
like some more things will pop up again.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, that's definitely the vibe that I've gotten, is that it's not like other trends that have like come back really hard and then
Yeah.
disappeared for a long
Yeah.
time. It's kind of like either always bubbling in the background or just it
Right.
pops up every once in a while. And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely like, especially for people our age who grew up, you know, with
It's true.
My Bloody Valentine and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I never got into any of that stuff really. But like you, I kind of like checked out some of it later, and there's some things that I like, but
Yeah.
I don't really know much about like that whole world of music. So
Yeah.
what was the other things I want to talk about? Let's see. Yeah, the other thing that I wanted to talk about, which um, I think you'd be a good person to chat with about, and I felt like, you know, this is something that I've thought about a lot over like maybe the last 10 years. So it kind of makes sense, you know, that Love Is a Stream is like 10 years old, but I feel like, and we're talking about like music scenes or whatever, I felt like there was like a really there was such like a vital scene from like, I don't know, maybe 2003 to 2010 in our kind of world of like experimental DIY electronic music, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of like touring. There was so much DIY work going on. People were putting out their own CDRs and tapes, and
Yeah.
you know, there were folks like us who were like a little bit older. I mean, we were younger back then, but and then there was like a younger generation
Yeah.
of kids, you know, who were like really getting into like the tape scene and LPs. And so you have like, you know, I'm thinking of like Emeralds and OPN and people who,
Right.
Renee Hell and people like that who came out. You know, it was like such a vital scene. And then it seems like, you know, maybe about 10 years ago, it just completely dropped off and fell off
Yeah.
the cliff. And I've been wondering like what the hell happened, and
Right.
what was the like, was there like a cause, or just people were getting older, or like, I have
Yeah.
no idea. It's interesting how that really kind of like, that was like a capsule of time that was like,
Right.
felt very vital. I mean, maybe because I was like involved in it to some degree, but
Right. And we were paying attention. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Or
that's a
did
good.
everything just moved on to the internet now? I think that maybe
Yeah.
that's what happened.
I imagine there's probably multiple causes that gave rise to things shifting. I mean, all scenes kind of move on at some point, right?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
the DC hardcore scene's still not going, you know. Like,
Right.
but I think the internet probably played something, played a part. I think economics, like I
Yeah.
remember maybe around 2005, like in the Bay Area, it was like Yellow Swans, Groupers, Skaters, Shirlambides,
Yeah.
Axolotl,
Right.
all the bands I was involved in, like the Alps and Tarantella and LA. There was a lot of that going on too. But like the economics of it, like you can't live in the Bay Area
Right.
anymore. Just like have a a sort of
everyone got
job that
pressed out.
affords you a lot of time to
Yeah.
also, you know, make music. And I don't know if that's possible in Portland anymore, or,
Right.
you know, so that's part of it, I'm sure too. But I don't know. It was a really vibrant time. Maybe something about the newness of it, and then people just got sort of fried because also like people were putting out like 20 CDRs a month. You
I
know,
know that
it's
was the
just
other
like
thing.
it's not sustainable. You know, and
Right.
it's like how much music can you really digest and really like allow to have like a deep effect on you? You know what I mean? Like when we
Right.
were kids, like I remember listening to Purple Rain like hundreds of times,
Oh
just
yeah,
over
yeah.
and over, and listening to like Minor Threat like hundreds of times, like in like when there's just like you're just inundated with stuff. I don't know. It's not that's not possible really. You don't
Yeah.
get that same sort of depth of like just really going deep with a record or
Right. Stuff just comes and goes, and you
yeah
listen
yeah
to it a couple times, and then you're on to the next.
yeah, and then put it on the shelf. And yeah, I remember at one point I just had hundreds of CDRs, most of which I just never listened to, you
Yeah,
know.
me too. I have like a bin full of stuff, like tapes and CDRs from that era. That I mean, I still listen to some of it, but
Yeah
so much stuff.
yeah
Now that we're talking about it, I almost feel like the the Bandcamp like Fridays, monthly Fridays is almost like the new, like, hey, this is my new like tape release or
yeah
CDR release.
yeah right,
Um,
it's
yeah,
true.
it seems like I think people have definitely just moved away from like wanting to produce like a physical thing and just
That's part of it
I've
for
got an
sure.
outlet like Bandcamp or SoundCloud or whatever, and I can just toss it up there, and that's
Yeah,
and I can get it out to people. And
that's that. I
the
think that.
other thing, the other thing that kind of, the other part of it that I think has also kind of gone away is like the sort of DIY like touring uh, culture and scene too, where people were just like playing shows all over the place, playing weird gigs,
Yeah,
just setting up stuff through friends. And a lot of that was like MySpace, and then a little bit after that, like people were just like organizing their own like tours, going from like play a house show and then a cafe and whatever.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, I felt like that. I feel like that, has that also that was a very more so than like all the releases that happened during that time. I felt like that was like a really cool aspect of that scene and time, was that
Yeah,
so much interesting live music going on.
it's really true. Yeah, there was a period in the Bay Area, like now that we're talking about it, I'm like I forgot Barn Owl and Date
Yeah,
Palms, and like like
yeah,
all
so many.
these. There's like in all the Mills College stuff that was happening, and
Right.
yeah, and just going to some crazy warehouse in Oakland or in
Yeah,
some part of San Francisco and seeing a noise show like that. That stuff's all dried up,
yeah.
Yeah.
So last night I was like trying to figure out like, oh, when did I meet Jeffrey? So I was like looking back. I
Yeah.
have I kept for years I kept like a
A
like a
show.
log of every show I've ever played, and like what
Yeah. Yeah.
date, venue, and who I played with. So I,
But wait, don't tell me. Let me guess. Let me
I
guess.
still have that. It goes up to like 2011, and then just kind of stops.
Wow,
But
that's
um,
amazing.
but yeah, what's your guess?
My guess is it was with the Alps,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's right.
And you were on tour with that French musician,
Yeah, Sebastian Roux.
Sebastian Roux, yeah. And we played at the Hemlock.
Yeah, you got it, man.
Yeah, rest in peace,
I
Hemlock.
know, I know. I saw that.
It's too bad.
Um,
Um,
do you know what year?
gosh, maybe let me just shot in the dark. 03, maybe
A little early, a little early. It was
05,
2006. Yeah,
2006. Okay, yeah.
and Ben Vita was with us too. He was playing
Yeah.
as
Wow.
Joe. Yeah,
Ben just came over a couple weeks ago. We had a yard hang. It was
that's great.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I don't remember Ben at that show really, but yeah.
Yeah, he was doing the Bird Show stuff that
Oh,
he
right.
put out like 3 uh records as Bird Show and Cranky, and they're amazing. It's like
Yeah, yeah,
it's like his solo version of Town and Country music, but
yeah,
like more psychedelic, and it's
yeah,
almost like some of it sounds like the stuff that like Josh Abrams is doing with
yeah.
Natural Information Society.
Right.
Just like again, just sleeper catalog hits that
Yeah,
people
totally.
will discover down the road. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was like 14 years ago, man. It's crazy.
Wow.
But then I was also realizing that I think I stayed with you a couple times, like
That's true.
around the time that you were making Love Is a Stream, probably because it was
That house that you stayed in was the house I made that
that's where you
record.
made it. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I
You
think
slept in the room that I would like work
yeah,
in.
that I slept I slept on the floor or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. That's yeah.
yeah, because I think I stayed with you in like 2009 or 2010 because I did a West Coast tour with Ori's, and then
Oh, I
I
remember
think
that.
I stayed with you before I went to Japan with Zach and
Right.
Liz and
And Liz
Ben.
and Ben.
Yeah,
Yeah. And Maxwell. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. That was so yeah, that was the house I made it in. Yeah. And I worked all that that record was made like early in the morning, like
yeah,
between 6 and at 7:30 a.m.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you moved to New York, like
Well, I moved to Germany first. I moved to Germany in
right. You went to Germany first. And then came back.
2011
Yeah,
and then moved to New York in 2013.
that's right. Yeah,
And
cool.
we just moved to the Hudson Valley this summer.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
how's that going?
It's cool. Yeah, it's a change. I appreciate the kind of slower pace
Yeah,
than New York City, and it'll be interesting to see how New York gets through the next, how it's transformed by the
yeah.
pandemic.
I know
I
it's
don't
gonna
know.
be. I don't know how big
So
cities like that are going to recover, or what they're going to look like after all this is over. Just
it's true.
if we just think like from our music world, kind of thing was like, are there going to be any venues left? Have all the
Yeah,
musicians like left the city? What's going on? It's like
yeah, it's true.
I think a lot about what music venues are just like hit the hardest by this whole thing because
Yeah,
their whole like business model is like, let's get a bunch of people packed
yeah,
into a room, and like be
yeah.
super close to each other, and it's like that's not happening anytime soon.
There's sort of no like adjacent like path of like the way to make money. Like
Yeah,
a restaurant you can like order out, or for some time you can actually have people sit outside. But like
right.
venues, there have been some outside shows up here,
Yeah,
um, but
yeah, people are trying to be creative. Like here they've done the same thing, like have outdoor concerts, or they're doing like Zoom concerts, but that's just like not the
right.
same. It's like,
I saw Bandcamp's doing like a live stream thing now that you can do.
yeah, that might be good. I mean, if it's centralized like that, it might be better. There might be more um, you know, viewership, and might be more
Right.
momentum behind it. Because it's whenever I see like a live, kind of Zoom concert or something, I'm always like, oh, that'd be cool, and then I just totally miss it, and it's
Yeah. Yeah. I just watch concerts on YouTube.
yeah, after the fact.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess we'll wrap up, but like, the other thing I want to ask was why did you choose to reissue this particular record instead of something else, and also what made you want to um, self release, press
Yeah.
up your own LP and do it that way.
Um, well, I wanted to self-release because I wanted to do the covers in a really specific way.
Yeah,
That's part of the reason that made the record so expensive, is that they're letterpress and offset print. So
yeah,
and I figure if like you're gonna do a reissue, like you should just do it as nice as you can. And so I'm not sure what the germ was of the idea to do the reissue. I really can't recall. Maybe I just noticed that it was going to be like, oh, it's going to be 10 years, like
Yeah.
in August or something. I was like, oh, October is going to be 10 years. And like, maybe it's like the deep reflection that the pandemic has like afforded all of us, you know, like thinking about our lives. But I suspect it's a record that I still feel like, you know, I don't feel ashamed of, like some of the other music I've been involved with or released. So it still feels like it has some energy to it. You know, it still feels like fresh to me. And periodically people have written me and asked if I had any of the vinyl, because Type, you know, they just produced a very small number of the records. And so I thought it might be interesting to do an LP reissue. And yeah.
Yeah, I actually, when I got out my original copy, I looked it up on Discogs. It sells for like $40, man.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Which is crazy for like, you know, a record from that sort of that era, but maybe because it was like pretty limited edition. And
yeah, there's probably only 3.
You probably gave me this copy.
I'm sure I did. Yeah, I don't even think I have copies of it anymore. I'm such a terrible cataloger of my own stuff. I hardly have any. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. It's great to talk to you, and
yeah, great to catch up.
I'm really excited to get this record out to the subscribers. I think.
Yeah, I hope people enjoy it. They aren't bummed.
Yeah. Oh, I think people will be. It's a good. I think it'll be a good one, and also just the fact that, like you said, you put in a lot of like care and effort to like make the reissue like a unique, you know, good, solid, unique object, and I think that'll be cool too. So.
Yeah, and also I just wanted to say how cool the series, what the subscription series that you're doing is. It's a great idea.
No, thanks. Yeah, I mean.
Yeah. Seems like people are responding to it. So
yeah, it's been nice, you know, finally getting this off the ground. It's something I've wanted to do for like 3 years, and you know, it feels good. I feel like I'm just getting started with it and have like a lot of ideas, you know, about how I want to kind of grow it and keep going, you know, going forward. So
cool. The Ellen Fullman record's amazing too. That was a great.
It's so good.
I had no idea she made work like that. It's totally blown away by it. It's really beautiful.
Yeah, it's definitely a surprise compared to all of her other music that we know. But
yeah.
All right, man.
Okay, Greg, take care.
Yeah, great talking to you, man.
Okay, talk soon.
Bye.